Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Ice Driver. Zen Mirai nudged the right flight stick on his control unit, and the 15-ton asteroid chunk beneath his feet stopped rotating. A tap on the throttle, and the longitudinal thrusters pulsed, sending him and his payload towards the cargo rail, the 200-meter-long metal tube with dozens of meteor chunks harnessed to it. They had already caught a batch of about 90 tons of ice, and this would be the last of their haul on this shift. "Status check," said Daw Artego through the local shortwave. He was sitting safe on Gopher 7, the bullet-shaped rail runner that pulled the cargo rail, a tiny vessel, less a spaceship than a spaceboat. His voice sounded tinny in Zen's spacesuit. Even though Zen had done this 1,000 times, sweat beaded his brow. Any extravehicular activity was dangerous, especially driving a rock. You needed a feather touch and patience. He remembered years ago a rookie named Cassie who had neither. Tired and bored, she thrust a rock too hard and wasn't paying attention. It rammed another one and damaged the cargo rail. That was bad enough, but she was caught between them and turned to paste. Add to that the fact the company cut corners to save pennies. He was still stuck using stone-aged, manually operated driving pylons, for example. Every shift, Daw would park their rail runner at a spot the survey team highlighted. Then Zen would have to suit up and jet over to a good rock. Next, he had to drill holes in it to insert the dozen 4-meter-long pylons, and then calibrate their thrusters, all by hand. Basically, his job was strapping jet engines to asteroids and then flying those asteroids close enough to the cargo rail so that he could harness them to it. After that, he got to disassemble everything, but at least from there on, the rail runner would pull their cargo. Legally, drivers weren't even supposed to actually ride the rocks, but it was the best way to react when something was inevitably misaligned. Endless room for error. "Just bringing her in," Zen said. On top of all that, Zen was stressed because they were smuggling a platinum asteroid with the ice. He pushed the rock gently forward and fired reverse thrusters when it was in place. It was darker than the ice chunks, and if anyone looked up close, they would easily see it was a different kind of rock. But nobody did visual inspections. The economics just didn't work out, and so they'd gotten away with smuggling 12 of these right under their boss's nose. Here's to lucky 13 and an early retirement. It took Zen another 2 hours of work to harness the rock to the cargo rail, and another 2 to disassemble the driving pylons. All the while, he hoped this was the last time they had to do this. He pictured his wealthy future, well away from the frozen hellscape that was ice mining in the Canner asteroid belt, and he wondered if that future included Leah. He both did, and did not, want her there. By the time he passed through Gopher 7's airlock, he was trembling from fatigue. Daw floated towards him in the ship's zero-G atmosphere and handed him a celebration margarita. It was a rubber ball with a nipple, filled with cold water, fruit-flavored protein powder, and a dash of moonshine. "Any word from home?" asked Zen. "Nah," said Daw. "They quiet. Ain't confirmed the last 3 check-ins either." Check-ins were every 12 hours, so the ice hauler Coleridge, their ride, had been silent for nearly 2 days. Probably just interference from the belt. Daw's voice was confident, but but he glanced to the side and frowned. Now, the trip back to the Coleridge took them a day. All the while, comms remained quiet, and since Zen and Daw were at the end of a 2-week shift stuck with each other, they were fine being quiet too. They'd been driving a long time together, had learned each other's patterns, knew when to step up, when to step back. Friends were scarce in the belt. Zen decided he'd tell Leah. It was a risk, but they were good together, and he trusted her. Maybe he'd propose and make it official. He was so tired of this life, an endless cycle of brutal, dangerous work, and drugging himself stupid. Last time on leave, he went on a bender. He had vague memories of drunken partying with Isan, Leah's brother. Memories of whoring and gambling. Comforting memories of declaring he'd leave ice driving behind for good. And these declarations made the idea real. And uncomfortable memories that he might have let slip something about the platinum. But even if he did, nothing had come of it. And this was their last run. They were safe. They would make it. By the time they had visual contact with the Coleridge, a hemispherical head connected to a 6-kilometer-long tail, scores of asteroid rails protruding from it like the quills of a pine branch, they still hadn't heard anything on comms. Maybe their comms are down, Dow said. Maybe a rock hit something. It wasn't unheard of. The Canner Belt was relatively safe for a hostile work environment, but it did throw the occasional gift at you, and the Coleridge's point defense cannons weren't always positioned to slag it. Maybe, Zen said, but he felt cold spread through his guts. The other 9 Gophers were already docked with their last rails, which meant the other 9 crews were already done their last shifts. Daw took them in, navigating to Gopher Bay 7. Normally they'd detach their rail and hook it to the Coleridge's tail, but since this was their last shift this run, there was no point. To stave off boredom and unease, Zen played around with the cameras, examining the massive Coleridge and her cargo. The field of dull space ice was worth a small fortune. Ice rocks were the main way of getting water on most of the stations in the system. Not that anyone outside the investors saw a real cut of the profit. Then Zen spotted something and frowned. "Check out camera 9. Daw complied. "What is that? We got guests?" An unfamiliar ship was docked with the Coleridge, sleek, narrow, and not broadcasting any ID. Zen swallowed. "Maybe," he said. They looked at each other. "You don't think," Daw said. He didn't have to finish the thought. Government auditors were their constant worry. They were rare this far out on the Canor Belt, but an inspection based on a hot tip would explain the radio silence. "Nah, it's nothing," Zen said, faking confidence. Had he babbled to Isan about his platinum? Had someone overheard? Had someone tipped off the government about smugglers? "Maybe we should dump the cargo," Daw said. Zen turned to him. "What? How the hell will we explain that?" They couldn't run. Gopher 7 depended on the Coleridge, and no doubt they'd been seen. It would be beyond suspicious if they tried to flee. Fine, Daw said. "We'll figure it out, or die trying." His response for pretty much any problem. "Worst case," Zen said, "we'll cut them in." Daw swallowed hard, and his lips drew tight, but he didn't say anything more and resumed docking. Nobody met them at the airlock, and they both let out breaths they didn't realize they were holding. No squad of Marines arresting them. No imperious auditor denouncing them for smuggling and treason, and 1,000 other things. Of course, things never actually looked like the movies, but the imagination did things when you were stressed. But they didn't see any of their crewmates either. "Nobody's responding on local comms," Daw said as they floated through the zero-G corridors. Think they got everyone rounded up? Doing individual interrogations? Interrogations? Zen said. This isn't some cheesy cop drama. Yeah, well, maybe we should get our story straight anyway. Zen hesitated. He hated how much sense that made. Yeah, fine. As they floated towards the command module, they began hashing out their story, each regretting they waited this long for the idea to occur to them. The unbelievable possibility that they were going to get caught was becoming more real with each heartbeat. When they came to a T-juncture in the corridor, they finally came upon some other people. 3 men floating towards them with purpose. Both groups of men startled and stopped, grabbing the railings that ran alongside each corridor to enable movement in zero-G. When Zen saw the men were armed, he felt a jolt of panic. They were Marines, but then he saw their faces. 2 of them were vaguely familiar, people he'd seen somewhere once upon a time. The third, Isin? It was the only word he managed before the others raised their weapons and started shooting. A hail of pneumatic slivers tore into Daw, thrusting him backwards down the corridor and leaving trails of globular blood hanging in the air. He didn't even get a scream out as a sliver punctured his throat. Animal panic gripped Zen, and he pushed off Daw, flinging himself back the way he had come. I got them! Isin's voice shouted behind him. Corridor 9B! 1 runner! Not police then. Pirates. Zen grabbed the railings and propelled himself faster and faster, attaining a skull-cracking velocity. Behind him, he saw the 3 men spill into his corridor and fire. Ahead of him, he saw the juncture that would take him back to Gopher 7. When he neared the juncture, he grabbed the nearest railing with the aptitude only a career spacer developed, and he wrenched himself into it. He strangled a scream as something in his left shoulder tore. Not because he was hit by their fire, but because human shoulders just weren't designed for swinging a body at such speeds. His grip faltered, and he bounced down the corridor towards the airlock, rolling to avoid more injuries. Each bounce was a new bruise and a new opportunity to slow himself down and steer. He screamed out the voice command for the airlock to open. His pursuers were slower. By the time they rounded the corner and fired again, Zen sailed into the airlock. The razor slivers sliced through his right side and thigh, his blood blossoming in the air. He slammed the door shut before the next volley came. The pneumatic weapons were ideal for tearing through clothes and flesh, but were too weak to do any structural damage to ships, the perfect weapons for safely murdering in space. Their slivers bounced off the airlock door. Zen's right side was on fire, and his body and face were covered in his own blood, which was clouding in the air. Come on, he shouted, starting the cycling process. Something thudded behind him, and he saw Isin's face through the airlock glass. He was snarling and banging on the door, probably saying something inane like, "Open the door." Fat fucking chance, Zen muttered. When the airlock cycled and the door to the Gopher 7 opened, he floated through, holding his side. He hoped he wouldn't need stitches, but he feared he did. Either way, it would have to wait. It was just a matter of time for the pirates to breach the airlock. He floated into the pilot's seat, Daw's seat, and shotgunned through undocking. Something shuddered, and he heard the deep wail of metal bending and breaking. He was licensed to fly, but as a backup for Daw, he rarely did, and probably forgot something. The checklists didn't cover fleeing from pirates anyway. Regardless, Gopher 7 didn't report any critical errors. Good enough. He lit up the thrusters and put some distance between himself and the Coleridge. But where would he go? He could outrun the Coleridge, and he had a head start on the other Gophers. But Issen's ship was a real starship, not a glorified cargo truck. He decided to dive into the Canner Belt itself, banking on Issen's pilot not being familiar with flying through rocks, banking on being familiar enough himself. Then an alarm trilled and his console flashed red. It was the friendly fire warning, in case the Coleridge ever accidentally aimed its point defense cannons at one of the Gophers. Only this time, it wasn't accidental. "Shit," Zen said. The whole ship rocked as the slugs tore through it, and he was knocked out when he hit his head. Zen's first thoughts were about making sure Daw was fine. Concussions were serious, and this wasn't just professional diligence. Daw was his friend. It took him a while to extricate himself from his seat, and by then he remembered that Daw wasn't there, that he saw Daw get murdered. Zen ran his hands over his face. "Shit," he whispered. Daw was dead. He felt cold inside, and he didn't really know why. This line of work claimed people all the time. A ship like the Coleridge might have upwards of 10 fatalities a year. But losing Daw was different. They'd been running this drive for nearly 11 years. They had a retirement plan. They'd leave this crap hole of a system, find a planet to live on. And now, poof, just like Cassie, they got careless, and the whole thing got flattened. And if the pirates were on the Coleridge and comms were down, the rest of the crew were probably dead too. Zen wondered if he really was the only one still alive. When he checked his right side, it was sticky with clotted blood. Stiff, sore, but he hadn't bled out. Lucky day. His hands hurt. His everything hurt. With trembling fingers, he tapped Gopher 7's cracked interface, trying to get an idea of what happened, of how much trouble he was in. He wasn't dead yet, and if there was a chance of making it out, he damn well was going to take it. Find a way to mourn the others properly. And maybe, just maybe, a spark of anger warmed his heart. Parts of the ship reported no atmosphere, so the hull was breached. The engine was gone, shredded by the cannons. The cargo rail was missing. He figured their asteroid haul had given him enough cover to avoid getting slagged entirely. Small mercy. He was stranded. But maybe he could do something unconventional with the maneuvering pylons, if any survived. And his radio still worked. That was good. But he was also deep in the Canner Belt, so it was unlikely anyone would be able to hear him. Floating through the belt and out the other side was about his only option. A couple weeks, if he was lucky and didn't collide with a rock. Then he could signal for help, and maybe in another couple of weeks, someone would pick him up. If he stretched his supplies, he had the food to survive that long. But the cannons had also clipped Gopher 7's water tanks, so all he had left was what was already in the pipes, maybe a day's worth. Zen sat back in his chair, groaned, and stared out at the Canor Belt all around him. An ocean of frozen water, as poisonous as the seas of old Earth, if not purified. Not something Gopher 7 was equipped for, not something Zen was schooled in. Zen chuckled. "We'll figure it out, or die trying. Tokyo smoke." Possible triggers: intimidation, slight, mention of drugs, and trial. She flicked the wheel of the lighter. Sparks shot up, followed by a small flame that she held to the end of the cigarette dangling from between her lips. "Talk. You've got about 5 minutes to convince me to let you live." "In that case, mind if I have a cigarette too? That's executioner etiquette, isn't it? Or is that just Hollywood?" "Just Hollywood," she said, but offered me her pack of cigarettes with her free hand just the same. Her other hand, the one hidden from view inside her jacket, pointed a gun at me. Not of the Hollywood variety. This was a Nambu M57. It would get the job done. Time's ticking. She pulled back the hammer for emphasis. The clicking sent a shiver through my entire being, commanding every single hair to stand at attention. "Would you believe me if I said I did it because I love you?" I asked, a futile attempt at lightening the mood. The strange thing, though, was that I meant it. Even then, as I looked at her, knowing full well she'd kill me once the smoldering tip of her cigarette reached the filter. "Really, Takashi, you did it because you love me. My dad is in jail, Mom's awaiting trial for complicity, and Itsuki is awaiting whether he'll be behind bars for 5 years or 27. I thought you liked Itsuki." "I did. But you didn't," I said, while I tried to light the cigarette I kept in the corner of my mouth. It was true. Although I didn't like him at first, he became much like a brother rather than just an in-law after we got married. I didn't look at her as I said it. I was staring at the graffiti frog that had made its appearance on the wall across the train tracks 2 weeks ago. But I knew the face she was giving me. I remembered every line that appeared on her usually smooth skin. "You always complained about how he badmouths you to your dad at every opportunity he got. It's the only reason he was going to take over the company. You're smarter, more experienced, and more ambitious than he was or ever would be. It should have been you, and you know it. As for your doc, stop. As for your dad, Hina, he chewed it up," I continued. "All of it." She poked me with the barrel of the gun to let me know who was in charge here. "That's no reason to have them locked up." True, it wasn't, but it was convenient. For years, even before we got married, she had been complaining about all of them. Her dad most of all. Ever since she was a little girl, she had been preparing to take over her father's company when eventually the time would come. She made sure she got the best grades all throughout primary and middle school. Even at university, she had always been at the top of her class, while on the weekend, she inspected contracts for business deals and saved the company millions by spotting hidden clauses. But none of that mattered. Once Itsuki was born, he was all her dad had cared about. I took a deep drag of my cigarette. Marlboro Gold. I always hated lights. They miss that slight scratching sensation when you inhale. Isn't it though? 5 years ago, during Christmas, when your dad announced that Itsuki would take over your position as CEO, you said you never wanted to see any of them ever again. I didn't mean that. Then you didn't mean it either when you repeated it after he gave you the opportunity to develop your skills elsewhere, for your birthday, I suppose? She was angrily fingering her cigarette, flicking of ash that wasn't there. I could only hope she was a little more careful with the trigger. I still had 3 minutes left after all. "Mind if I get something from the vending machine?" I asked. Last meal and all that. I got up before she could give me an answer and walked over to the overpriced candy dispenser. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet that wasn't there. "Can I borrow a 500 yen piece, hon?" She didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. "Fine." I looked around, but of course there was nobody around at this hour. The parking lot was empty, but for 4 cars. I turned a quarter turn and forced my elbow through the glass. "Ah, motherfucker. That looks a lot less painful in the movies." I took 3 packs of Pocky from the machine, careful not to cut my hand on the sharp edges. Strawberry, matcha, and the regular ones. I wasn't sure which ones you liked best. I thought strawberry, but it could have been matcha as well. "Anyway, here's both," I said, and sat back down on the hood of my beat-up Honda Odyssey. She didn't try to take any when I offered the box to her, just took another drag of her cigarette, which was reaching the halfway mark by now. I always liked the original best myself. I took a drag of my own cigarette before taking it from my mouth and taking a bite of 4 of the chocolate-covered sticks at once. Disgusting. I still don't get it. How can you eat and smoke at the same time? I lifted my shoulders in answer and swallowed before blowing out the smoke I'd been holding up in the air to be carried off by the wind. I never had a problem with eating and smoking at the same time. I knew many people who did, though. Back to what I was saying, I did it for us. In return for the evidence about the shipments of cocaine I gave to Nasanto Corp, they offered me 1 billion yen. 1 billion, Hina. You'd be rid of your family. We could both quit our jobs and move somewhere else. We'd never have to work again. Tell me that doesn't sound like a dream. You wouldn't have to teach at the high school anymore. No more overtime and compulsory socializing with colleagues. Isn't that what you always wanted? Not like this. They are still my family. And how do you think this will look for me? With my family name ruined? I'll be seen as the daughter of some drugs cartel. My parents weren't like that. They didn't even know about it. The arms of the gold-plated station clock twitched. 10:35. The dial was beautifully decorated with the image of a sun that, in the morning, reflected the sunlight so brilliantly that it seemed to shine itself. Now it was barely visible at all. True, that was on Itsuki, but none of that would have happened if you'd been in charge. Besides, your dad will be out in, 3 years? Your mom's sentence will be even shorter. I doubt she'll even have to do any jail time at all. You just don't fucking get it, do you? You think that's the story the media is going to run with? That it was just my brother and the rest of us had nothing to do with it? Sure, I might not be seen as an accomplice, but I'm part of that family. You didn't ruin just them. You ruined all of us. Honestly, I didn't get it. Maybe it was because I'd never been close to my own family, or just because we were rich now and could go wherever we wanted. You took my last name when we married. No one will associate me with them once we move somewhere else. Where do you want to go? Osaka, or maybe Kochi? You always loved the beach. Hell, we could even go to Europe. You pick a country, and we'll be on the next flight. My eyes were fixed on the entrance of the empty train station. One of the lights illuminating the statue a little to the left of the gates was flickering and drew my attention. It was a statue of a man, but I didn't recognize him. Over the past 6 years I'd been coming here, I'd never taken the time to read the plaque. "You've got about 1 minute left," she said, inspecting the cigarette clutched between her fingers. "I've got to say, you're doing a real bang-up job so far." The gun was still pressed in my side, but it didn't scare me as much anymore. It was just there. "What would you like me to say? That I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry, a nice car, a big house with a pool? We can have all that if you want, but you already know that." She let another gray cloud escape from her mouth as she nodded. Then she turned to look at me and gave me another look. "Go on. We could have kids, a boat." She scoffed. "Really? You think having kids will fix this?" "We tried having kids, remember? It didn't exactly work. We could always adopt them. You used to dream of having a boy and a girl. The boy had to be older, you always said. If we adopt them, you can make sure we get that." She let out a deep sigh. "It's almost time, Takashi. Anything you want to say, I suggest you say it now." I took a drag of my cigarette as I thought it over. Your last words are hard to come up with on the spot. I took another drag while staring at the statue again. Who was the statue of? Takashi? Her tone was annoyed more than angry. She prodded me with the gun once more. Yeah, I'm thinking about it." I looked back at her. Her eyes didn't have any emotion left in them. No love, no anger, no sadness. I still love you. I'd want those to be my last words. I still love you, I repeated. She shook her head. Then, right as she shot away the still smoldering cigarette butt, the 10:38 train drove into the station. I took a final drag of my cigarette and shot the butt ahead of me. That's my cue, sayonara. Hoodwinked. The only thing worse than tracing a witness 5 years after is to find out he has forgotten all about the crime, or at least the bits that matter. But Detective Syed was no greenhorn. He smiled at the 19-year-old who was sitting across the table devouring his second plate of chicken cafriel. So, is the chicken tangy enough? Yes, Detective. Thank you for buying me lunch. Daniel D'Souza grinned, his cheeks still plump with the spicy treat tucked in. Not at all. Thanks for agreeing to meet me here. Detective Syed swirled the sparkling water, then took another swig. It was a hot April afternoon, and Baga Beach looked bare. I know it's hard for you to talk about it, but what you can tell me can save a life. The fork fell into the green sauce, and the young man picked it back up. He wiped the corners of his mouth with the paper napkin Britos had stacked at every table, and met Detective Syed's gaze. Sir, I was just 14 at the time, and was visiting my uncle, and helped him in his gallery that sold souvenirs and other knickknacks. Detective Syed completed the statement, and cataloged the antiques. It was off-season, and he had very few customers walking in. So, you used to stay till the shop closed in the evening? Yes. And what time would it close? All shops in Panaji close around 8 p.m. I thought you knew it, the youngster snorted. So, you closed at 8 p.m. every evening? Yes. No exceptions? Not any that I can recall. Well, on the 30th of April, 2016, it was open at least till 9:30 p.m. Afterwards, the CCTV blanked out. Oh, it was the last day of the month. Maybe it was open for stock taking, staying open late at night after a whole day of no business? Detective Syed cocked his left eyebrow. Detective, can I leave now? I'm not feeling too well, and I can't recall much. Daniel tried to slide out of his bamboo chair. The detective's eyes held steady. Daniel, I have not even started asking anything yet. And you know I'm going to get to it one way or the other. So, why don't you help me out here? I can be of no help to you, Detective. I shouldn't even have come here. It was a mistake. Daniel got up and hobbled on the slippery sand. Detective Syed cleared his throat and said in a voice that rose above the waves that crashed outside. We went through the old CCTV footage. It shows someone coming out of the shop at 9:30 p.m. Daniel stopped in his tracks and turned. He walked back to the table and growled. You know, Detective, I was a minor at the time and can't be charged with anything. True, but you could have been sent to a juvenile detention center. Could have been, but wasn't. Wait, for what? Daniel's face turned red. For whatever you didn't confess to, Detective Syed said in an even tone as he gestured for Daniel to sit down. We are not here to talk about it, though. We are here to discuss the footage we got from Tanishq Jewelry 3 days ago. Daniel's sported the same look as the fish kept on the ice at the entrance. So, Daniel, how about you sit down and I'll order you a bibinka? No, thanks. I'm full. What is it that you want to know? Daniel, on the night of 30th April 2016, between 9 to 10 p.m., robbers drilled a hole in the back wall of Swarna Jewelers and hauled the stuff worth INR 8 crore with them. As you already know, it's next to Pablo's gallery. You didn't hear anything? No. As my uncle said at the time, I was not there. Daniel rasped through a clenched jaw, which we know now is not true. How can you say that? I'm sure many own a hoodie of the same brand, but I'm sure they will not be wearing one on a humid April night. And who said anything about a hoodie? What hoodie? Daniel countered. Detective Syed let out a chuckle. He knew it was the best antidote for teenage bravado. Okay, the same one that the CCTV outside Tanishq captured 3 days ago. This one should be easier to remember. Daniel's face turned pale. What is the connection between the two? You tell me. The detective parleyed in a calm voice. Okay, I was helping my uncle at the store the night Swarna Jewelers was looted. But I swear, we didn't hear a thing. We had almost finished when a man in a dark blue hoodie turned up at the store asking for a lighter. He was wearing shades, and I found that suspicious. He didn't realize I was watching him as he took out his wallet and dropped a gun. My uncle at the register could not see it, but I did. The vase in my hand fell, and the next moment, the gun was pointed at me. Okay, what happened next? I can't remember what exactly happened. Daniel's eyes were like the floodgates about to be opened. Detective Syed leaned back on his tubby chair, rocked the back of his head in his knitted hands, and cajoled. Take a deep breath and try again. That bibinka is still on the offer? I think my uncle begged him to spare me. The man asked us to turn off the CCTV and stay in the shop, and left. Was that what happened? Yes. And you left the city the next day to return after 5 years? Yes. Only the new CCTV footage we found from Tanishq across the street tells a different story. Detective Syed leaned forward and drummed his fingers on the table. Which is, Daniel sniggered, the man in the hoodie never walked out of the gallery. Daniel's eyes went wide. But you said you saw him walk out. No, it was a 14-year-old who walked out wearing a dead man's hoodie. Daniel gulped air. Detective Syed half shut his eyes, scratched his chin, and continued, and walked back into Tanishq store 3 days ago, and quite possibly other places across Goa before that. I have a theory. He was tracked down by the fellow robbers of the dead man. They made him an offer he could not refuse. Be a part of their gang, or go to juvie for murder. Daniel's face went blank. He whispered in a trembling voice, nice theory. I came back as I got admission into a college in the city, which is a nice cover-up. Daniel, you don't have to tell me what happened at the gallery that night. And I think I know the reason why you wore the same hoodie. Which is, supposing your theory is correct, you wanted to be rescued. Is that a possibility? Daniel's eyes begged, still too scared to be hopeful. Yes, if you can help nab the gang and finish eating bibinka The corpse in the city. The car comes to a halt at the far edge of the car park behind the bank. Tom sits quietly for a moment, as if in a trance, eyes forward. Only his left arm moves as he pulls on the handbrake. His eyes drop, focusing on his finger, pressing the button to release the boot lid. Slowly, he turns his head and glares. Are you going to help me or not? Jim lets out a puff of breath, leans his elbow on the car door, and stands up. His shoes crunch on the dark gravel. The car park is deserted. With wide eyes scanning the area, he moves to the rear of the car and begins wrestling with the wheelchair. This thing's worse than a deck chair. Jim whacks the wheelchair onto the ground and rubs his hands across the seat. As he finally gets it unraveled and stable, Tom opens the rear passenger side door and unclips the seatbelt that is holding his Uncle Charlie upright. There is now an urgency in his manner. His breath comes in short, sharp bursts as he scurries round the back of the car, slams the boot shut, and then crawls along the back seat toward Uncle Charlie. Line the chair up, Jim. You pull and I'll shove. Tom places one palm on Uncle Charlie's shoulder, one on his hip, groans and pushes. Jim tugs on a resistant arm and leg. Eventually, Uncle Charlie lands with a flop on the seat of the wheelchair. Jim tugs at the black overcoat to straighten him up, tucks in his arms, and lifts his feet onto the footrest. The sound of 4 doors and the boot closing echoes around the vacant car park and surrounding tall buildings. Yellow lights flash, showing the car is now securely locked. Standing back, Tom inspects his Uncle Charlie. What does he look like? Dead, says Jim. Pull his hat down over his face a bit more. Jim grabs the rim of the dark brown trilby and forces it over Charlie's head, then tilts it forward, covering Charlie's eyes. Tom takes another look and nods his approval. Gathering the strap from the back of the footrest, he buckles in his uncle's legs and then wraps a green tartan blanket tightly around them. He places a second blanket across his uncle's lap, covering his uncle's hands, and tucks that securely in down the sides. He straightens his back and breathes out a satisfactory sigh. That'll do. I'm not happy doing this, says Jim. Tom's head spins round. What? I'm not happy. Well, you're a bit late telling me that. If you want some of the money, then you better start feeling happy right now. Jim mumbles under his breath, snatches the handles of the wheelchair, and begins pushing it across the loose tarmac of the car park toward the exit. His breathing becomes labored as the wheels spin in every direction. Charlie's head bobs up and down, loosening the trilby. Tom reaches over to straighten it out as Jim marches onwards toward the smooth pavement and the bank entrance. I'll do all the talking. You just agree with me if they say anything to you. The blood drains from Jim's face. He says nothing. The 2 men push the wheelchair into the bank and join the queue. Jim hums to himself. Tom prods him. Jim stops humming. Tom fiddles with his Uncle Charlie's hat and the buttons of his overcoat. Are you all right there, Charlie? Won't be long now, and we can get you home for a nice cuppa. Jim stares at Tom in disbelief. Tom kicks Jim in the shins. Ouch. Next. The cashier's voice booms across the interior of the bank. Can we withdraw some money for my Uncle Charlie, please? Tom points to Uncle Charlie in the wheelchair as he hands over the slip of paper. Is he all right? Says the cashier. He's had a stroke. Sorry to hear that. It's a lot of money. We don't normally deal in such vast sums. He's going into a home tomorrow, and he needs the money to buy bits and pieces. You know what it's like. The care homes take all your dosh. I do indeed. The cashier smiles. If you'd care to wait, I'll sort this out for you. I see your uncle has already signed the slip. Well done, Uncle Charlie. Tom bends over the wheelchair and pats the knees covered by the blanket. Charlie does not move. The cashier returns, stamps 3 sheets of paper, smiles, and hands over a large envelope full of notes through the slit underneath the protective glass. Next. Come on, Jim. Let's get out of here. Tom grabs the handles of the wheelchair, spins it round, and heads for the exit. Jim scuttles along behind as Tom races along the pavement back toward the car park. Tom turns the wheelchair round, tips it up onto the 2 back wheels, and drags it across the undulating ground. We did it, Jim. We did it. Tom lets out a muffled laugh as he squeezes Jim's biceps. Now, let's get the bastard back in the car. Tom checks the car park for pedestrians, then grabs the shoulders of his uncle. Jim unbuckles the legs and takes hold of the ankles. Between them, the 2 men heave the motionless mass into the car and slide it along the back seat. Jim spreads the 2 blankets on top and throws the wheelchair into the boot, then sinks into the passenger seat. The engine revs as Tom's white knuckles grip the steering wheel. The car speeds out the exit as the spinning tires kick up black tarmac. What are you going to do with Uncle Charlie? Says Jim. We've got to put him where they can't find him. There's a skip over there. Jim pointed. Don't be daft. What about one of those giant green bins? There's one outside the Dog and Badger. Are you mad? We can't just dump him anywhere. The police will find him. It's got to be somewhere. No one knows. We're going back to my place now, and we'll get rid of the knobhead later tonight. We've got to do it soon, before he turns black and smells. Tom stops the car in front of the garage, while Jim jumps out and opens the doors. The car shunts forward. Tom switches off the engine and gets out. He helps Jim secure the garage doors, and then they both go into the house. Jim sinks into the nearest armchair and immediately falls asleep. Tom races upstairs and jumps in the shower. He looks at the clock. They've got to be on the move before midnight. Tom carries the 2 suitcases downstairs and places them by the front door. He nudges Jim awake. In whispers, he tells Jim to hurry and organize himself. as they must deal with Uncle Charlie on the way to the airport. Jim rubs his eyes, goes into the kitchen, drinks a glass of water, grabs a biscuit, and then goes into the downstairs toilet. When he comes out, Tom tells him to take the 2 suitcases and put them in the back of the car, and not to forget the coil of rope that is hanging on a hook just inside the garage door. Jim puts the 2 suitcases and the coil of rope in the car. Tom starts the engine and backs out. He stops the car in the driveway, gets out, and checks the front door and closes the garage doors. Where are we going, Tom? To that new industrial estate they're building on the outskirts of the city. It's on the way to the airport. They arrive at the new industrial estate, and Tom parks in a mud-filled lay-by near some railings at the end of the no-through road. Get the rope and tie it tight round that shithead's chest. Make sure you go under his arms with it. Jim takes hold of the rope, pushes it under Charlie's back, and ties it in a tight knot over his chest. Tom takes a jemmy from the boot of the car and lifts a manhole cover and drags it to one side, close to the railings. Tom grabs the rope and lugs Charlie out of the car. Charlie hits the ground with a loud thud. Tom and Jim take an in-breath and look around. Silence. Tom continues dragging Charlie across the mud to the waiting hole. Now you help me lower him in. Slowly, they eke out the rope and lower Charlie into the hole. Then secure the end of the rope onto a girder near the top and replace the cover. Will he be all right? Says Jim. What do you think? Says Tom. What'll I do with the blankets and the wheelchair? Says Jim. Tom points to some bushes behind the car. Throw them over there. Jim takes the blankets and slings them over the bushes, and then heaves the wheelchair in the same direction. Come on, Jim. We've got an hour's drive to the airport yet. Tom sits back in the seat on the airplane and sips his red wine. Jim's head falls forward, and loud snoring pours forth from it. Tom and Jim pull up a stool at the beach bar, their favorite haunt from previous Spanish excursions. Relaxed and smiling, they order a beer and proceed to quench their thirst for the high life. A heavy hand on their shoulder makes them jump as the tanned, bulky torso of a man stands between them. Don't normally see you 2 idiots here this time of year. Tom flops his head forward, clearly relieved to see it's a friendly face. Hi, Jack. No, you're right. Just visiting for a bit. And where's Charlie? The old bugger hasn't snuffed it, has he? Tom coughs. Jim swallows hard. No, he's fine. Didn't want to come. We've left him hanging around back home. A life of regret. When Raj had stealthily installed the I Spy 200 Vision Plus device on his wife's prescription glasses 2 weeks ago, he had no idea the device would enable him to watch and hear from her perspective. In a way, relive her last day alive. It was this morning Raj had received the Blue Dart courier with the pen drive containing the recording of the last day of Mira's life, her first and only day of wearing her glasses with the I Spy installed, just before the horrific car accident in which her car had been hit on the rear by another fast-moving vehicle. The police believed it to be a truck, or a bus. Mira's Ford Endeavor had spiraled out of control and plunged into the river beside the road where she had drowned before she could be rescued. When her car had been pulled out, Raj had collected her things, including her glasses, and sent them to the technical facility of the I Spy Corporation in Mumbai, where the team had extracted the audio and video recorded on the device and mailed the file to Raj on a pen drive along with a hefty check for their services. Taking a deep breath, Raj poured himself a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which also happened to be Mira's favorite wine, for he needed his courage for what he was about to do. 3 large gulps and soothing warmth in his throat equipped him the nerve to plug in the pen drive and click on the folder dated July 24th, 2021. Wondering what their 16-year-old daughter Hina would think of this blatant breach of his wife's privacy, Raj pressed the play key. The world came into focus with dainty hands with black painted fingernails, placing the glasses over a nose. The camera panned to the left and focused on the other side of the bed, where a portly man lay sleeping with his mouth slightly agape. Raj watched the laptop screen with his heart racing as Mira leaned closer and kissed his bearded face before wrapping her gown around her body and proceeding towards the bathroom. He paused and watched the affectionate gesture again, frowning. He must have been fast asleep because he didn't remember his wife kissing him in the past 3 months. Not since his near-fatal heart attack. Was there a corner of her heart that still loved him, even though she was cheating on him? Raj shrugged the thought away, and taking another sip of the wine, resumed playing the video. In the bathroom, Mira placed her glasses on the bathroom sink while she proceeded to undress and step into the shower. For a few moments, Raj hated himself for lowering the laptop screen. This wasn't why he was spying on his wife, and somewhere in his heart, he knew he was violating her privacy after she was dead, which made it worse. But then he lifted the screen once again to watch his wife bathing, still as glorious at 43 as she was 20 years ago when they had first met. Raj couldn't credit her genes for her fitness levels, for her 2 sisters were both overweight and looked 10 years older than their age. The credit was all Mira's. She loved swimming in the clubhouse and sweating it out in their backyard with her 10-kilogram kettlebell. With a twang of shame, Raj glanced at the tires of fat around his waist, which made it impossible to see his feet without leaning over. Maybe he deserved a wife who cheated on him. After all, he had completely let go of himself over the past 10 years. A factor, his doctor proclaimed, had contributed to Raj suffering a massive heart attack at 46, despite having no history of heart disease. Mira put on her glasses as she emerged from the bathroom and got dressed in a navy blue suit for her office meeting. Each Monday, she had a meeting with her boss, a man she detested but tolerated because it allowed her to provide for her family. As she combed her long, wavy hair and effortlessly styled them into a chignon, Raj caught his own reflection in the mirror on the bed behind her. A middle-aged, unshaven, unemployed man perched on the edge of the bed, wistfully watching his beautiful and successful wife, who was everything he wasn't. Did he feel resentful towards her? Was it her fault she had done well in her life, while he had simply failed at everything he tried? Was it love that still kept them together? Or was she only with him for the sake of their teenage daughter? "I'm going to be late today," she said, without glancing at her husband. "Today's the last date for the submission of the RFP response, and Kana would expect me to finish it before I finish my day." "How late?" he asked desolately. "Late," she said firmly, giving him an icy stare. "Eat your dinner if I'm not home by 8. I hope you can manage to feed yourself and Hina." It was more of a statement than a question. Raj heaved himself from the bed with much effort. "Let me get breakfast started. I'll eat in the office. Anyway, I can't eat anything before my Monday morning meeting, you know that." Through the camera, Raj saw his own sorry figure as Mira grabbed her purse and laptop bag and left the room without another word to him. She paused by their daughter's room, and after a perfunctory knock, opened the door and stepped in, closing the door behind her. Raj remembered sticking his ear to the door, eavesdropping on their conversation. But all he had heard were some muffled noises, as though they were deliberately trying to keep their voices down. It had started 2 months ago, when one night, Raj had woken up to find his wife's side of the bed empty, and loud, arguing noises coming from their daughter's room. As he had tiptoed to Hina's room, he heard his wife yelling, "Do you know how old you are? I'm 16. I'm not a child anymore. You're just 16. You're still a child. You cannot do this." "I can, and I will," the daughter had argued back. "I forbid you." And on and on. The argument had fired back and forth between mother and daughter until Raj had stepped into the room and both had frozen, and then sputtered an apology for waking him up. Docilely, Hina had apologized to her mother, and Mira had embraced her daughter. But Raj had sensed that it was just a temporary ceasefire owing to his heart condition, and the real issue between mother and daughter was not yet resolved. When he had probed about the subject of the argument, both had dilly-dallied without giving him the truth. While he appreciated their concern for his health, Raj wanted to be part of important discussions affecting their daughter and wasn't happy with being left out. Now he watched keenly as Mira stood facing their daughter, Hina, who was still in bed, as it was early for school. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mira said warmly. Hina, a scrawny 16-year-old girl with crazy curly hair, mumbled a good morning from under the covers. "I was leaving for office. I wanted to talk to you." before I go," said Mira, sitting on the edge of the bed. Hina sat up on the bed, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Is everything okay? Is Dad okay?" Raj's heart swelled with happiness at the concern he heard in his daughter's voice for his health. While not the most affectionate or expressive person in the room, Hina did show her love occasionally through her gestures. Mira sighed deeply. "Your dad's fine. He's recovering, you know. We can't let anything stress him out." Raj thought Hina looked away guiltily at her mother's words. "You know what I'm talking about, right?" Mira pressed on. "Yes, Mom. Have you met him again? Outside classes?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure, Mom." Mira's gaze dropped to the bed cover, and her delicate fingers smoothed out the covers. "I know you went to his house on Friday." Hina's expression was that of a deer caught in the headlights. I went to his house to say goodbye," she stammered. Mira's sigh was deep and audible. "I want to believe you. Really, I do. But I can't. You've broken my trust, Hina." Hina was now almost in tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. But really, I had gone to his house for the last goodbye. I'll never see him again. Except at school, of course, where I can't avoid him." "Good. You know, once your dad is better, we'll do something to fix this problem permanently." Hina's ears perked up at the suggestion. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I mean, there's more we can do to fix this problem. I don't want to do anything right now because of your dad's precarious health. But once he's better," at this, Hina threw the covers and jumped out of bed. "You can't punish him, Mom. It was my fault as much as his. Promise me you won't do anything." Mira rose, placing the strap of her laptop bag across her chest. "I'm not promising anything, sweetheart. Let's talk about our options in a few weeks' time. Until then, if you see him again outside class, I'll know right away." Hina stared at the wall clock behind her mother's head. "I won't see him like I promised." Raj's mind galloped to process the new information he had learned about his daughter. She had a boyfriend. Apparently, a boy from her class. Was that the reason for the strife between his wife and his daughter? Or was there more, he wondered, as he fast-forwarded the part of Mira's day where she attended her Monday morning meeting with her boss and worked in the office. Everything about the exchange surprised him because he was the overprotective parent, constantly worrying about every little thing regarding their daughter, while Mira was more of a liberal parent who allowed Hina to experiment and even encouraged mistakes, even though he thought it inadvisable for young people to date before 18. What Hina was going through was completely natural and expected. Why had his wife freaked out so much on finding out about Hina's boyfriend? Resuming the video from the point where Mira got into her Ford Endeavor after leaving office, Raj watched keenly as she checked her freshly applied lipstick in the rearview mirror and used her dainty hands to smooth her hair and tuck some wild strands behind her ear. She turned on the ignition and began driving in a direction opposite to where their home was located. When the police had questioned Raj about where his wife was returning from that fateful day, he had surmised that perhaps she had taken a detour to the market to shop for something for their daughter's upcoming 17th birthday. And maybe she had liked something, but wanted to discuss with her husband before buying the gift. Raj wasn't quite sure what had prevented him from sharing his suspicions with the police that his wife was probably having an affair and was returning from a rendezvous with the other man. It was probably as a token of respect for their 18-year-old marriage and consideration for their daughter that Raj had kept his suspicions to himself. With rapt attention, Raj watched the curve of the river, hugging the road, and the familiar city roads zipping past the fast-moving vehicle. As he expected, the car moved through the South City Market and towards the residential area next to it. Mira parked the car behind a dented Mahindra XUV 500 parked in the parking space and stepped out with her purse over her shoulder. She rummaged through her purse for something, and apparently not finding it in there, she leaned into the car, opened the glove compartment, and extracted a pepper spray. With the pepper spray ensconced in her purse, she marched to the front door and rang the bell. The pepper spray confused Raj. If she was going to meet her lover, he'd have expected her to be rummaging in her purse for something other than a pepper spray. The heavy brown door was opened by a balding man with horn-rimmed glasses on his nose. Mr. Sehgal? Hina's physics teacher? Was Mira having an affair with him? She detested the man and had even argued with him over some marks after the first term examination results. Nothing made sense. The man's face deflated on seeing the visitor. Raj thought Sehgal looked shocked to the point of being afraid on seeing Mira. Surprised? Said Mira. Why? Were you expecting my daughter? I don't know what you're talking about, the man stammered. I know you've been having a romantic relationship with my underage daughter. The man inhaled deeply. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have proof. Those letters you wrote to her. I found them, and I immediately knew they weren't written by a boy, but by a grown-up man. How could you do this? You're at least 50 years old. You disgust me. The man's nostrils flared with fury. Listen, you can't come to my doorstep and accuse me of something I haven't done. You need to leave, he said, beginning to close the door. Mira's ring-studded hand stopped the door from closing. I am leaving, but not before I warn you to stay away from my daughter. If you try to talk to her outside the class again, I'm going to inform the police. The only reason I haven't already contacted them is that Hina begged me. She begged me to let it go, and... Mira paused. The man was peering from behind the half-closed door with his narrowed eyes. And what? Mira sighed deeply. And nothing. I'm not calling the police right now because of my husband, who is ill. I don't want him to know about this mess. But if you contact my daughter again, I'll have no option but to call the police. Raj's world was spinning around him. So this was what the mother-daughter arguments were about. Now that he realized what had happened, it made perfect sense. Why then had his mind jumped to the conclusion that his wife was cheating on him, and the reason Nina was arguing with her mother was that she had somehow found out about her mother's affair? How could he have been so naive to jump to a disturbing conclusion based on a mere happenstance? The only thing Mira was trying to do was protecting their daughter from the pedophile and protecting her sick husband from the stress of the situation. The sudden onset of guilt at suspecting his innocent wife of cheating on him and violating her privacy made Raj sick in his stomach. Having half a mind to close the laptop screen, Raj continued watching what was probably the last hour of his late wife's life. Soon, she would be on her way back home, and her forward endeavor would be hit on the rear by a vehicle that would send her spinning towards the river and to her death. Things seemed to be moving in slow motion as Mira delivered the final threat to the physics teacher, and leaving him with his jaw hanging, reversed her car out of the driveway, turning around towards her home. As she drove on the highway next to the river, Raj kept his gaze on her rearview mirror, his heart racing. If he was lucky, he'd be able to view the plate number of the vehicle that had hit his wife's car and hand over the evidence to the police. With his heart in his throat, Raj watched several large vehicles on the highway approaching his wife's car, and some of them overtaking it. Resisting an urge to tightly shut his eyes, Raj continued watching the last few minutes of his wife's life. What must be going on in her mind at the time, he wondered. He regretted not telling his wife how much he loved her and how much he appreciated her supporting the family, especially since he had lost his job. He regretted every harsh word he had said to his wife, every missed opportunity to appreciate her, each occasion he could have been kinder to her. Thinking of their arguments, and every time he had raised his voice at her, made him burn with shame. Was this his punishment for not living a purposeful life? For not living deliberately, but just drifting along the currents of everyday life? Raj sat bolt upright as he saw a vehicle he recognized approach his wife's car from behind. This couldn't be right. Why was the man following her? Raj knew the answer to the question a split second before he saw Segal ram his Mahindra XUV 500 into his wife's car and send her spinning towards the river. Water engulfed the world around him, and he saw the bubbles of air escaping his wife's mouth and nose as the water pressure shattered the windows and rushed into the rapidly sinking car. drowning its only occupant. At some point in time, the glasses drifted away from Mira's face, and through the camera, Raj saw his wife's face for the very last time. Some of the guilt that Raj felt for violating his wife's privacy was washed away with the knowledge that he now had the evidence to bring his wife's murderer to justice. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Raj closed the video file and picked up the phone to dial the police. Thoughts kill. I held in my cough as I entered the bathroom, senses already on high alert. Smoke unfurled around, blinding me for a moment. It took a second to gauge my surroundings, but once I had, it came as no surprise to see my older brother standing in their group. The only boy in here. After all, this was a ladies' bathroom. I watched in the mirror as the cigarette got passed around. A girl with pouting lips, caked in maroon lipstick, passed it to my brother. His lazy smile at her and the smoke around were in competition to make me nauseous. A familiar bubble of bile arose in my throat as he puffed out carbon monoxide. I clenched my nostril muscles, focusing on fixing my hair in the bathroom mirror. Luckily for me, I hadn't been spotted yet. They all started laughing as he did some kind of trick with the smoke. My eyes were so narrowed now, I could hardly see out of them. Once my hair was done, I walked over to the door, palm raised to open it. When a girl's voice said, "It's coming tomorrow," my brother's voice answered, "The LSD?" "Shut up!" the girl barked, leaving the bathroom deathly silent. I felt his eyes on my back before I saw them. Next thing I knew, I was slammed into the bathroom wall, inches from a familiar face. His lip curled. "Hello, sister." "Your sister?" the girl asked. She better not be a snitch. My brother didn't answer. I took refuge in the fact that I knew secrets of his that he'd rather die than let his friends know. Or that I knew he still had nightmares about Dad. Or that he used his blanket as a tissue for his snotty nose. His breath steamed on the mirror next to my head as he leaned in harder, earning a yelp from me as I felt his shirt button press in. "Don't let me find you in here again." I arched an eyebrow in response, trying to mask the turmoil inside. "LSD? No way." "Oh, brother, should I tell them?" He read all his secrets on my face. "Go to hell," he snarled. I held out my hand in answer. He looked ready to spit on me as he pulled out a $5 from his pocket. I shook my head with a smile. He took out another. I took the money from him, squirmed out from the bathroom, and contemplated calling Mom. I knew Caleb drug dealt, but this? Everyone knew it never stopped at Cigarette Dog. It had only been a matter of time, and that night I gave the money to Mum with a too bright smile. "You know, honey, I don't need a commission from the money you earn. The job pays well, Mum," I said with a shrug, the lie spilling from my mouth like silk. She gave me a side hug, then carried on with her work. I lingered for a moment, at odds on whether I should tell her. But when I saw her eyebrows sink into a furrow, her lips into a frown, I decided that she had enough on her plate. When the front door slammed, indicating my brother was home from God knows where, neither my mom nor I left our rooms to greet him. The ritual had been long gone since Dad had left. Well, Dad's hello was more actions than words to Caleb. I can't deny that I hadn't felt the want to stop him all the time. Hearing his footsteps outside my door, a feeling of hate so red clouded my mind that I found it hard to breathe. Mum was at the epicenter of it all. Her money had all been stolen by him for the drugs he was addicted to, then played off as a fraud. I was simply recycling the money back to the owner. It was tough falling asleep that night, knowing I couldn't stop what was going to happen tomorrow. But even if I could, I wouldn't. I wanted him to hit rock bottom. That was the only hope for change for him. And maybe that made me a sucky person. Hell, the worst person. But it's what he deserved in my eyes. The pain I saw flit on my mother's eyes when he'd come home drunk a few weeks ago was enough to make my fiery personality want to put a bullet through his heart. I avoided that bathroom at all costs on Tuesday. There was no way I'd be near choked again. I'd had to cover the bruises from yesterday up with a woolen scarf. In summer, I looked like a right idiot. School went smoothly. Well, as smoothly as a high school day in America can possibly go. And then I was home. I put my phone on D&D, the thoughts running through my mind, demanding instant attention. Being home alone was one of my favorite things. Just my mind and I sat on my windowsill, watching the city below me. There was something so serene in feeling the wind play on your face, to be isolated, but to also see hundreds of people below you, hustling around. I wonder if this is how God feels. I don't know how long I sat there for, but when I next opened my eyes, the sky was pitch black, and the city was now bustling with partygoers, dressed in sparkling dresses, with equally shiny champagne glasses in hand. I quickly climbed inside, wondering why my mum hadn't called for me yet. But then I heard a noise from her room. I hadn't realized how tight my chest had gotten, but it loosened as I felt her presence in the house. Caleb wasn't home yet. Mom? I asked, tentatively pushing her door open with a toe. I got a shock when I saw her bloodshot eyes turn up to look at me, tears streaming down and mixing with her mascara. I rushed to her side. Mom? What's wrong? I asked, a little forcefully, the panic already rising. Her eyes held mine as she whispered the words I thought I'd never hear. Caleb is dead. Chad. The phone finally rang. It had been 5 days. The investigators said they'd call once they found out what had happened. LSD doesn't kill, I murmured to myself, over and over. but it doesn't change the fact of what happened. "Hello?" I answered, words tasting weird on my mouth after not talking for nearly a week. "Is your mother there?" I passed the phone to my already crying mom, leaning in to listen over her shoulder. I only got bits and pieces. 5 minutes later, my mother put down the phone, hand still trembling. "It wasn't LSD. He didn't take LSD. So he took something else?" She shook her head, her throat bobbing as she swallowed a sob. "The supplier sold them a synthetic drug as LSD. I had one goal. One. To put that supplier behind bars for the rest of his life. Maybe that would take away the guilt that I practically killed my own brother. The prankster, Lennox, was the golden child to a set of loving mother and father who believed her to be the most auspicious thing that ever happened to them. They never reprimanded her for her childish pursuits, let alone denied her anything she ever wanted. An army of helpers were always at her beck and call. She pulled immature pranks and toyed with them to her heart's content. Her impishness was further encouraged by her parents, who laughed it off her as a sign of childishness and immaturity. Asher, Freddie, and Sarah were all Lennox's best friends. They belonged to well-off families and were as unruly as Lennox. They were all indifferent to the pain their actions might cause to the person at the receiving end. A boy named Austin was the current target of Lennox and her gang. Austin lived in the servant quarters along with his father, who was a driver at Lennox's house. He was a nerdy and ambitious kid who wanted to support his father when he grew up. Lennox often instigated him to join her gang, but he politely refused because he was aware of the activities they indulged in. This made Lennox despise him, and she decided to hit him where it hurts. She stole the extra key of the servant quarters from her mother's bedside drawer and located the books she often saw Austin reading passionately. She set all of the book on flames, which left poor Austin crying bitterly. This was just one incident of the many that followed. Once Lennox's parents shrugged it off as a mistake. With the passage of time, Lennox became more obstreperous and even started talking back to her teachers when they rebuked her for her rebelliousness. Her partners in crime always did as she said and supported her in her petty pursuits. One day, Lennox was playing catch with her friends. One of her friends dared her to throw the ball as high up in the sky as the overhead rooftop of the adjoining house. Lennox, being the competitive girl she was, immediately accepted the challenge and flung the ball with all her might. But the wall hit the glass casement of the house, resulting it to crash into pieces. Lennox had failed to complete the dare. She headed towards the house to collect the ball, fuming with anger. She rang the doorbell. It was answered by an elderly woman whose gray hair was neatly tied in a bun. She was wearing a thick-rimmed black frame containing bifocals. She gave Lennox a sneering look and remarked angrily, "You broke my window, you insolent little brat." You will never get that ball. Get out of here. Shoo! She shut the door with a loud thud that made Lennox flinch. Lennox returned to her house with her cheeks turned crimson red with anger and embarrassment. Her friends, who bore witness to the whole scene, were snickering at her, adding insult to the injury. I'll make the old hag eat her own words and beg for forgiveness. She vowed to exact vengeance on the poor old woman who was her next target. The next morning, Lennox and her gang hatched a devious plan that would extinguish the fire of revenge ignited inside Lennox's heart. They dug up some information on the old woman and found out that she lived alone in that big house. They had decided to make a fool out of the poor old woman by making her come to a realization that her house is haunted. They made their way towards the old woman's house in order to execute their seemingly flawless plan. Everyone hid behind the car, parked right outside the house. According to the plan, Asher ran towards the house and rang the doorbell as many times as he possibly could, and Quickie joined his friends, who were hiding behind the car. A few minutes later, the old woman poked her head out of the gate and muttered something under her breath when she didn't find anyone standing on the other side of the door. She shut the door with all her might, which made a loud, banging sound. Lennox felt amused at her frustration. This process was repeated thrice till the old woman was heaving tiresome breaths and sat on the pavement outside the house with beads of sweat forming on her forehead. She bent down and struggled to pick up her staff, which showed clear signs of exhaustion. A few moments after she went back into the house, Lennox declared that she would bang on the door this time instead of ringing the doorbell. She headed towards the gate and started banging on the door with all her might. A few moments later, she heard a loud thud and the sound of a piece of wood falling on the ground. Curious to find out what had happened, she looked through the peephole of the gate and gasped as soon as she saw the old woman lying flat on the ground, along with her staff that had a significant tear in it as a result of impact with the ground. Lennox immediately rushed towards her house and narrated the whole incident to her mother in one breath. Her mother was shocked. "I am very disappointed in you, Lennox. I have always ignored your childish pranks because I thought you will eventually learn on your own that it is not okay to hurt people just for a few laughs." Her mother reprimanded her while calling the nearest hospital for an ambulance. The old woman was rushed to the emergency. The doctors revealed that she had minor heart attack as a result of a strenuous activity. Lennox came to the hospital every single day to see the old woman, but she didn't have the guts to meet her. After a week, she finally found the courage to make amends for her mistake. She bought a colorful bouquet, a brand new staff for the old woman. When she arrived at the hospital, she came to know that the woman had left the country with her son, who had recently come from Italy. Lennox fell down on her knees and started sobbing. At that moment, she vowed to never pull pranks on anyone. She returned home and apologized to Austin and all the other people she had wronged throughout her life, moral. In an attempt to satiate our ego, we often end up hurting people beyond repair. The cheating husband, draping the palu of my sari around my waist. I tucked the loose end of it into the petticoat to avoid getting ketchup and oil stains on it as I helped serve piping hot samosas, ordered fresh from Narina's bakery in Indiranagar, into the Corelle plates. The whiff of the spicy mint chutney I dolloped into each plate made my mouth water. Next, I served vegetable spring rolls, paneer tikkas, and semolina idlis flavored with mustard seeds and curry leaves into each plate, adding chicken tikkas into the plates for the 2 non-vegetarians in our group of friends. Said Mira, tasting the cream of mushroom soup from the ladle as she leaned over the stove where the soup had been simmering. Careful, darling, I said, grabbing her palu as it slipped down her shoulder and nearly licked the flames of the stove. You should tuck it in. Mira turned around, facing me as she smoothed her lavender chiffon sari. What do you think? The layered diamond necklace around her slender neck and the diamond studs in her ears shimmered under the bright kitchen lights. The makeup, expensive and excessive, had done its bit in covering the fatigue that comes from working long hours in an HR leadership position at an IT services multinational corporation. But it couldn't camouflage her dissatisfaction with nearly everything in her life, including her husband, who I thought doted on her. You look stunning, I lied. Beautiful sari, she scoffed, rolling her eyes. One thing Raj does well after years of practice, picking up the right gifts for me. You've trained him well. You know, Adi doesn't even know what the various fabrics of saris are, let alone buy a sari for me. There are many other things my husband, Aditya Gulati, does not know, including the surprise I've planned for him tonight, which he should be receiving any minute now. Oh, come on. So what if he can't buy a sari for you? He brings home enough money, she said, winking at me. Well, that's true. And an added incentive for what I was about to do tonight. I'm his only family, and the next in line to inherit his business empire. Should any misfortune befall him, I would have preferred to sit on one of the cozy couches in the living room, sipping wine with the rest of our friends, pretending to be interested in the gossip and the conversations. But if I didn't help in the kitchen tonight, as I usually did, when our fortnightly get-togethers were held at Mira's place, just like she helped when the parties were held at my place, everyone would notice. And tonight was not a night I would want to be remembered for behaving oddly in any way, however inconsequential. People adhered to patterns and routines unless something was on their mind. And there was absolutely nothing on my mind. Nothing I could talk about anyway, as we carried the plates to the living room to serve the 5 women, gazing hungrily towards the kitchen. And I accidentally glimpsed at the wall clock. My heart raced with the knowledge of the unfolding events at 211 Palm Springs. It was 9:02 p.m. He would be breaking into the house right about now, with his expert gloved fingers working the lock on the back door. The light click of the lock would go unnoticed by the 2 adults in the bedroom or in the bathtub, enmeshed in each other's arms, oblivious to everything except the immediate, stark sensations of the flesh. He would then go to one of the rooms and rummage through the drawers and the wardrobe for jewelry and other valuables, and keep at it until Adi, finally alerted by the strange noises coming from the adjacent room, would cover his toned body by a robe or a towel and go to the next room to investigate. My breath caught in my throat as I pictured the long-bladed dagger piercing Adi's torso, quick stab wounds, at least 5 of them. As the victim's wife, I'd receive a detailed post-mortem report, and my contact would receive the full payment only if the work was satisfactory. After finishing off Adi, he would then stifle the woman's impending scream with a hand over her mouth and a dagger in her heart. The spicy tang of the mint chutney flooded my mouth as I pictured blood splattering white walls, the police dubbing the double murder as a burglary gone horribly wrong, and closing the case after being unable to find any trace of the suspect at the crime scene or any other lead, even after months of the investigation. Just as Tanya, our plump, sari-clad friend with diamond-studded stubs for fingers, began waving her pudgy hands in the air and describing the sordid details of a high-profile divorce case her husband was working on. My phone began vibrating in my purse. Not my ordinary phone, but my burner phone, the one I'd bought recently for one specific purpose. My heart plummeted on seeing the name Sheila Sharma flashing on the screen. I'd saved the investigation agency's number by this name to avoid any suspicions at home, even if Adi had stumbled upon the phone by chance. I would have told him it was my new office phone. The subject was seen entering house number 211, Palm Springs, at 2 p.m. in the afternoon on March 19th. The subject and the female resident of 211, Palm Springs, were seen on the balcony having drinks at 2:35 p.m. and embracing at 2:49 p.m. Holding hands, they went in towards the bedroom at 2:55 p.m. The subject emerged from the house at 4:45 p.m. and left the house in his car. There were many such reports I'd received in exchange for the total bill amount of rupees, 450,000 pound, I'd shelled out over 3 months. My husband was cheating with a much younger, unmarried woman who worked as a receptionist in his office. He hadn't yet brought up divorce, but I had a feeling it was on his mind, and he was looking for the best opportunity while building up his courage to talk about it. I stepped into the cool air on the balcony and closed the sliding door behind me. "Hello," I answered the phone. "Mrs. Gulati," said a deep, cultured voice at the other end. I immediately recognized him as Mr. Aurora, the managing partner of the agency. But why would he call me himself? It was usually the manager assigned to my case who communicated with me. The protocol was that the secretary would first call me up and set up a meeting with the case manager at my convenient time. At the allotted time, she'd call me again and patch me into the call with the case manager. "Mr. Aurora," I said, "what's the matter? I'm really sorry to be calling you up at this time, and I apologize if this call has caused you any inconvenience." He paused. "I'm afraid I have some bad news." "What?" I blurted out. My mind was spinning. I had made the last payment to the agency a week ago and terminated our contract after receiving all the evidence they had collected over the past 3 months. Everything I needed to set my plan in motion. What could have possibly gone wrong? Mr. Aurora cleared his throat. "There was a mix-up at our end. The file and the evidence we gave you was for another case, not yours. It's a grave mistake, I know, and I personally take full responsibility. We are willing to refund your full amount." My knees buckled under my weight. What did he mean? Was my husband not cheating on me with the pretty receptionist? But even before I had hired the investigation agency, all the signs were there. Adi was returning home late every day, many a time with his clothes smelling like a woman's perfume. He was distracted and extremely possessive of his mobile phone, taking it with him to the toilet as if he needed it to wipe his ass. No, my husband was certainly cheating on me. All the signs were there. "I want the correct file," I said, finally finding my voice. "Of course," said Mr. Aurora, his voice heavy with relief. "I have it here with me. I can have it delivered to your office tomorrow morning. Would that be okay?" In my purse, my other mobile began vibrating. Why was Roy calling me at this hour? I had spoken to him 2 hours ago on my way to Mira's house. He knew I'd be occupied today, and how critical it was for everything to be perfect tonight. One call in one evening could be attributed to work discussions. We worked together, after all. But 2 calls on the night my husband got murdered could arouse suspicion. I groaned inwardly. "Sorry, did you say you have the file on your desk?" "Yes, I do." "Read it out to me." A pause. "Sorry, Mrs. Gulati. Transmitting this information over the phone." My head was exploding with fury, splotches of red blurring my vision. "Listen to me, Aurora. You've fucked me by giving me the wrong information. I could sue you for lakhs of rupees. I could have your ass arrested. Read me the information right now, or you'll pay dearly for your mistake." I could hear his mind's machinery whirring over the mobile phone. "Aurora, I said in my best intimidating voice. Just a minute, please, he said. Some papers rustled. Your husband indeed is cheating on you, Mrs. Gulati. The address of the woman in question. Yes, I said breathlessly. C401, High Garden, in Duranagar. The woman's... I'll call you back. I snapped the phone shut, holding my head between my hands. Mira, my best friend, Mira. Adi and Mira. I could not believe it. I was going to ask them to bring photographic evidence this time. I wouldn't believe just the report like I did the last time. With trembling hands, I dialed my contact's number. Maybe it was not too late for the couple in 221 Palm Springs, somebody else's cheating husband and his mistress. Maybe the dense Bangalore traffic had delayed my contact. Maybe call waiting. He was talking to somebody else. Fuck. Roy's name flashed on my mobile once again. Hey, is everything okay? I froze on hearing Myra's voice behind me. She had appeared silkily out of nowhere and was now standing less than 3 feet away. I gazed into her brown eyes, trying to find the answers to my questions. Was it really you who was having an affair with my husband? Why did you betray your best friend? All's well. I need to use the washroom, I said, sliding in through the door past her. I went directly into her bedroom and closed the door. 2 or 3 minutes was all I had before she became suspicious. I began rummaging through her jewelry box on the dresser. If she was the woman Adi was having an affair with, she'd be missing a leaf-shaped diamond stud, one of which I'd found between the bed and the mattress while changing the sheets in our guest room. So many earrings, and rings, and chains, and gold, and diamond. And the woman was still unhappy. Aha! There it was. A single leaf-shaped diamond stud. Just one. I closed the jewelry box quickly and went to the washroom to splash some water on my face. So it really was true, huh? My husband and my best friend. Unimaginable. I grabbed my burner phone from my purse and dialed my contact once again. Thankfully, this time he picked up on the second ring. Ma'am, he said in his hoarse voice. The work is done. I'm out of there. Everything went according to plan. I sat on the toilet seat and began hyperventilating. Somebody else's cheating husband and his mistress were dead, thanks to me. If I got rid of the burner phone, there still wasn't anything to link me to the murders. In fact, given that I had no idea who the victims were, there was no way the murders could be tied back to me. The investigation agency would keep quiet. I'd make sure of that. I'd pay the contact discreetly, as I'd originally planned. Anyway, he was a professional killer who wouldn't get caught. There was nothing else. Roy's name flashed on my mobile for the third time in the past 10 minutes. Roy was my married colleague, my longtime friend, and now my lover for the past 6 months, ever since I began suspecting that Adi was cheating on me. He'd been such a source of comfort to me. become a very special part of my life. Did I love him? I don't know. I certainly missed his ribald jokes and his infectious laughter, the confidence he exuded, and the affection he showered upon me, his sharp intelligence and his precise meticulousness when he wasn't around. Once I'd got rid of Audie, I looked forward to spending more time with Roy. Our first night together would be very special. I was sure of it. "Hello?" I answered. I was greeted by a sputtering sound. "Roy, are you okay?" I asked, alarmed. "I've been..." The rest of the sentence was wiped out by a fit of violent coughing. I stood bolt upright. "What's wrong? Where are you?" "Stabbed. I've been stabbed," he managed to blurt out. "What? Where? Have you called an ambulance?" he said. "When he stabbed me..." "Roy!" I screamed into the phone. "When he stabbed me," he said. Courtesy of Mrs. Galati, my phone slipped through my fingers and clattered to the tiled bathroom floor. My first instinct was to scream, but I simply collapsed on the cold, hard floor. As the sound of the wailing police sirens pierced the night air, I stared bleakly out of the window, contemplating the swiftly approaching karmic retribution. Bloody hands. The night was pitch black because the moon was too shy to come out from the clouds. With a restless heart, I stood there, waiting for my brother. I knew what I am doing is a sin, but sometimes the path of sin is the only path forward. I agreed to this for Mom. She really needs my help. I broke the window. "Come on, it's time. I have a bad feeling about this. Don't you want to help Mom?" He always uses the mom card. Do I love my mom? Yes, I do. But that doesn't mean what we're doing is right. Because of his dumb idea, we're sitting right outside a stranger's house in the middle of nowhere. A simple mistake could derail our whole plan. Mom needed money, and she was never going to ask me for help. But I wanted to help her. She has done enough for me. Maybe more than enough. Being a single mom in this patriarchal world is pretty painful. I know that. That's why I asked my 1 minute older twin brother for help. Never did I think he would come up with a plan for a heist to save the family. Mom will have a heart attack if she finds out about this. She won't know about this. I swear on Dad. He talked as if he knew what I was thinking. Whoa, calm down. I will go in. We never talk about our dad unless it's necessary. So I knew he was serious. He always comes up with all these stupid ideas that get me in trouble. But Mom thinks it's me who does all this. But this time, he might be onto something. But I think the same thing every other time until things start to go sideways. Yet, I was ready to take the chance one more time. I opened the door and went inside the dark kitchen. The whole place was filled with a foul smell. If my expert brother is correct, a man lives in this house alone with a priceless gold chain of his ancestors. Many have seen him roaming around in his courtyard with the chain around his neck. I just have to find him, sedate him with chloroform, and steal the chain. If I am lucky enough, he will be sleeping with the chain around his neck. Just take it and leave while slowly sneaking towards the bedroom. I looked back to make sure my brother was behind me. I stopped in the middle of the dark room when I saw a hammer in his hand. What's that? Nothing. It's just for protection, as I stood there, unsatisfied with his answer. The lights went on. The next thing I heard was a man screaming in fear. While I looked around to find the source of the scream, I heard a bang. A strange man fell onto my arms with a bleeding head. His helpless eyes reminded me of someone I knew. Dad? As I was trying hard to figure out what was going on, I heard my brother's voice coming from the door. With a bloody hammer in his hand, he was screaming, "Come on, let's go." As I started to run, following my brother, I knew things had gone wrong. I could feel the warmth of the blood splattered all over my face and clothes. Slowly, my vision began to blur. I could no longer see my brother. Darkness covered my eyes. I continued to run into the dark path in front of me. After running for some time, I reached my house. I got in through the back door, just like I did at that stranger's house earlier. I felt the guilt growing inside me. I should find my brother. I searched the whole house for him, but he was not there. Where has he gone? I need him. I tried hard to bottle up my emotions so I won't wake up my mom. She was sleeping. After working all day long for me, she deserved the rest. She needed the sleep. I searched for my phone to call my brother. I need him now. The eyes of the man began to haunt me. I could feel my mind going out of control. I couldn't handle it. The phone was not in my pocket. It was there. It was there when I went inside the man's house. It must have slipped out. I bit hard on my arm to feel some pain. I fucked up big time. Mom's going to lose it when the police come for me. She won't take it. She can't take it. I began to hear sirens from far away. Where is my brother? Where is he when I need him? I felt a sudden weight in my left arm. It was the hammer, soaked in warm blood. Wasn't it in his hands? I saw him run away with it. How did it get here? My head began to spin. I could hear the sirens getting louder. The police are coming for me. They will drag me away from my mom. They are going to make her sad again. I won't let that happen. She doesn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve any of this. Free her. Free her from the pain you will cause. The pain she is about to feel. I could hear my twin brother again in my head. He always comes up with all these bold ideas that get me in trouble. But this time, I think he is on to something. As I moved towards my snoring mom, I could hear the sirens nearing. I can't let them take me away from my mom. I smelled her beautiful black hair with the soothing smell of jasmine. I lifted the hammer as my brother told me. With a full swing, I bashed the hammer into her head. All of a sudden, the sirens in my head went silent. I stood there, looking at my hands, covered in my mom's warm blood. The cursed town. Content warning. Murder, suicide. He walked up through the dusty road which led to the small town of Tamans. It was twilight, and a light wind was blowing. Far away, the crop plantations acquired a greenish-orange color due to the light of the sun. On the other side, one could catch a faint glimpse of the Timan's church, with its tall steeple standing majestically high up in the sky. The yellow-orange hue of the sky washed the town, and the muddy red road was illuminated with a touch of gradient yellow. The whole town looked peaceful, and surprisingly, nobody was outside their houses. He entered the town and looked at the banyan tree in front of him. It had remained much the same. He looked up at the houses and walked towards them. Darkness was falling now. The red-orange hue was slowly swept away, and a dark blue color entered, only with a touch of crimson at its bottom. Shadows fell here and there, creating a spooky atmosphere, and he quickened his pace, as if to avoid the evil spell cast by the shadows of the houses. The moon came up, not too bright, for clouds were starting to surround it from all sides. He glanced upwards and realized that he had to take shelter somewhere. Rainfall could occur any time now. He walked through the dusty and muddy road and looked here around for inns, but there were none. Finally, he found a big apartment, which was deserted. He let out a sigh of relief and walked up the stairs and entered the apartment. It was evident that the apartment was still under construction work. It was not completed. However, years of neglect had withered away the raw smell of the brick walls, and small plants could be seen growing almost everywhere. All of them had a feeling of evil in them. The brick walls, the plants, the floors, and even the ceiling. It was like they had witnessed a lot of sad events and were telling him not to go further inside the house. The house itself was spooky, with its large corridors and almost no rooms. A huge, round staircase led to the other floors. The grayish appearance of the apartment matched perfectly with his gray and withered t-shirt and pants. He went up the staircase and reached the terrace. It was broad and wide, and one could see the beautiful town stretched before it. He looked down and was surprised to see an old woman with a lantern standing in the doorway of the apartment. waving her hands to call him. He descended the staircase and ran out of the apartment to meet the old woman. The woman was short in stature and had gray hair, with sometimes a tint of black in them. Her face was wrinkled, and she looked at him through her cat-green eyes, piercingly. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. "I am a visitor, and I came here for certain business matters. I could not find any inn to spend the night in, so I came here," he said. She looked at him suspiciously, and then said, "Okay, you better come with me. This place is not good, especially at night." He nodded his head and followed the old woman. He was cold with fear and could not understand what was happening. He followed her till they reached a cottage, and the old woman asked him to enter. He went inside and enjoyed the warmth of the fire which was lit. He sat down on a sofa, and the woman came to her with a candle. She placed the candle on the table and handed him a plate. "You must be hungry. Here, have some food. You better not go to the apartment anymore." "Why?" he asked. "It's a long story. I have seen too much of this world to remember happy deeds. Most are evil." "What do you actually mean? Do you want to hear?" "Yes, I do." She took a long, deep breath and then began. "Long ago, when I was about 17 years of age, there used to live a plantation owner named Hamilton. He had a lot of money and was very rich. You see those plantations? All those were Sir Hamilton's. He was not only rich, but kind and generous too. He used to donate with open hands. He had a beautiful wife, 4 daughters, and 1 son. However, naturally, his neighbors were very jealous of him and despised him. He did not care that much for that. But one day, his neighbors attacked his family. His daughters were of almost my age then, and the son was only a baby. They killed his daughters and his wife, but somehow Hamilton and his son were able to escape. "Why did not Hamilton inform the police?" he asked. "There was no evidence against the neighbors. He had nothing to do. I later heard that he had fled somewhere to Canada." "But how does it relate to the apartment?" The old woman sighed. Her green eyes glistened, and she said, "The apartment was being made by Hamilton. He wanted to turn it into a hospital." "Yes, but how does that matter anyway?" Rain had started falling heavily, and the fire and candle went out. The 2 people were left in total darkness. However, he could still see the old woman's eyes glistening. The old woman said, "For the past few years, there had been a lot of suicides there. Many girls of around 16, 17 years are committing suicide there. It all started with the daughter of Mrs. Morgan. She jumped from the terrace we were standing a few minutes ago. The second case was of Mrs. Rayon's daughter. She was found hanging from the chandelier one morning, her face white and terror-stricken. He was taken aback and looked at the old woman with wide and fearful eyes. Lightning struck, illuminating the whole room for a and he could see the old woman's face, ugly, wrinkled with a strong, piercing glance, which was almost witch-like. He wanted to run out of the house, but some strange power kept him rooted to his seat. The old woman said, "You better go to sleep now. I guess you had a very tiresome day." The old woman showed him his bedroom, and he fell down on his bed, immediately asleep. The next morning, when he woke up, he could see the sun shining brilliantly outside. He heaved himself up and went to the living room. The old woman was preparing coffee. She handed him a cup, and he sat down on the sofa. He drank from the cup the delicious, thick cappuccino and felt refreshed. He almost forgot all the horrible incidents from yesterday night. "Where do you want to go today? I can show you the way. It is evident that you are new to this place, as you were talking about inns in here. I have heard about Kingsman's Place here. Can you please take me there?" "Kingsman's Place? Okay, I will. It is a business center here. When do you want to go?" "About 9:30. What do you say? Please prepare a packed lunch for me." "Of course. Get ready then." He went back to his bedroom and took out his suitcase. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was middle-aged, but still, he looked pretty young. He brought out a coat, shirt, and pant, and put it on. He looked the perfect businessman. After having breakfast, the two went out. On the way, they came across the Flint River. There he saw some girls whispering and talking together. One of them was extremely beautiful. Her fair skin with an orange tint made one remember pure milk. Her eyes were a deep blue, and she had beautiful black eyelashes. Her cheeks were pink, and her lips were a light red. Her mass of curls was thrown at her back, and she wore a pretty green dress. Her hands were well toned, and her legs were slender and well shaped. She looked a pretty picture. He stared at her for some time, and then she turned to the old woman, and pointing to the girl, he asked, "Who is that girl?" The old woman glanced at the girl and then said, "She is Mr. Trudeau's daughter." "Pretty, isn't she?" "Yes," he said. "What is her age?" "About 17. He sighed and gestured at the old woman to move forward. They reached Kingsman's Place, and the old woman left him there with his lunchbox. He did not wait there. As soon as the old woman was out of sight, he started running. He did not stop until he reached the old building. He entered and went up to the terrace. The terrace was absolutely empty. Despite being so large, the parapets were very low, and there were high risks of falling to death in case of an accidental slip. Unlike the rest of the house, almost no plants were there on the terrace due to some unknown reason. He roamed here and there on the terrace. He stepped very carefully, and whenever he looked down, he was sick at the sight of houses so far down below. He hated heights and was afraid of them. He went downstairs and waited. You know, Laura, I will go to Grandma Fontaine's house today. The words kept ringing in his mind. To reach Grandma Fontaine's house, she had to cross this building. There she was coming, alone. Nobody was with her. He waited silently, and as soon as she came in front of the apartment, he gripped her hand and pulled her inside. Before she could scream, he put a handkerchief under her nose, and smelling the chloroform, she fell unconscious. He now prepared for it. He dragged her upstairs to the terrace and carefully washed her face. He then threw her down the parapet, and she landed with a loud thud sound. Dead. Yes, she was dead. Blood was flowing from her, and her pretty face was peaceful. He quickly fled from the place before anybody could see him. He did not return to the old woman's house. He kept walking towards the outskirts of the town. It would take him almost 3 hours to get out. He had seen his own sisters and mother get killed in front of him. Those Morpins, Rayons, Trudeaus, and Greys have killed them out of jealousy. He and his father had somehow fled. But after some time, his father also died. He died saying, "Kill Morpin, kill Trudeau, kill Rayon, kill Gray. Don't let them live." He had done that. He had killed all of them, except Gray's daughter. He would be back for her after the next 4 years. Yes, he would not let her live. They do not deserve to live. They had destroyed his life. He would destroy theirs. He would not let them be happy when his own happiness had been snatched away from him. Never. He looked back at the town. It was twilight yet again. The town looked peaceful, but he could hear faint sounds of crying. Let them cry. They will have to cry again after 4 years. He turned and walked away from the town as darkness fell and made the town silent. The sins that betray us. It was a warm Parisian evening, and fog rose from the Seine. It mingled with the smog of industry and clouded the gas street lights that dimly lit cobblestone streets. Beside the Seine, in the 4th arrondissement, was La Force prison, within which was the man Eugène Vidocq, whose wrists were shackled to the dungeon wall by cold steel chains and ankles bound by manacles. Eugène had black, curly hair and long, thick sideburns that taunted the corners of his mouth. He wore rags. His nose was still bruised from the scuffle. To detain him, when 5 men were needed to pin him down and capture him. "Monsieur," he said, speaking to Julien de Veria, the Parisian chief of police. "I became a criminal the night my father had me arrested as a boy. When those gendarmes had turned up and taken him away to a cell that night, he had felt betrayed, devastated, and humiliated by his father. Above all, he had felt angry. and that anger had stayed with him all his life, a chip on his shoulder that had been ever present in his interactions and informed his life choices. Julian sat in the opposite corner of the dungeon on a wooden stool. His top hat lay in his lap, and his walking cane leant against the wall. He remained as still as a gargoyle. Your trial for treason commences at first light, and you wish to reminisce about your father. Do not waste my time. The flame of torches lining the walls flickered. A rat scurried between iron bars and retreated into the shadows. I have watched the guillotine sever the head of my dear friend César Herbeau. This cannot be my fate. He shook his head. The surprised look upon César's face as his head fell to the ground was forever etched in his memory. He could not shake it, could not recall how César used to smile, or the jovial times they had shared in local brothels. You have deserted from the army. You have stolen, you have forged, and you have destroyed marriages. Why would I care about your fate? Orange from the flickering flames glinted in Julian's eyes. A distant scream echoed around the chamber. It briefly registered to Eugène like the sound of a new prisoner being subdued into his iron attire. Monsieur, I crave a life no longer on the run, said Eugène, thinking of his recent arrest. His estranged wife, who left him for a soldier, had found him back in Paris and reported him to the gendarmerie. He could never be free while the sins of his past stalked his being. Such is the fate of a criminal. Why would I care about what you crave? You are wasting my time, Julian said, snatching up his cane and smashing it against the stone wall. He stood. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, let me tell you what I can do for you, so as not to waste any more of your time. Julian pushed out the backs of his jacket and sat carefully on his stool. Proceed. Thieves adore me. Hardened wretches esteem me. I drink and mingle in their circles. I have their trust. I know their hearts. I will gather their secrets and share them with you. We have informants already. Why would I need you, monsieur? I will be the best of them all. Of your informants, do any have as much esteem amongst the other criminals? Of your informants, have any been as cunning as me to escape prison so many times, even dressed as a nun to avoid detection? Sir, I will go to lengths those simpletons could not even imagine imagining. I will be your best informant, monsieur. I know this without a doubt, and I think you do too. I can't trust you, monsieur. When my late father had been arrested as a boy, my fate was sealed. In my mind, I became a criminal. It has taken my whole life to realize he did that out of love. I can be different. I can be of use to society. I can be the man my father knew I could be. I don't know if you can, monsieur. I've seen the end. I've seen my friend's head freed from his body by guillotine. I know that God's grace has all but kept me alive. I will be as devious as I was in crime, but use those skills to catch the criminals and make Paris safer. He shook his head. Just as the rats carry the plague, I fear you spread a vile truth. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, just give me one last chance. Please. Julian was silent. We will hold off your trial in the morning. But know this, you are one mistake from execution. I want intelligence, actionable intelligence, or you'll be seeing your father sooner than you had imagined. He stood, gathered his cane, placed his top hat on his head, and waved to a guard outside the cell to let him out. Eugene put his head back on the stone wall and blinked away a tear. He would be tireless. He would be disciplined. He would use the tricks and the cons and the black arts he had learned. It was clear that Julian barely believed what was said, but that was fine, because he knew what was there in his heart. And it was true, and with time, he would prove it. He felt the anger that had fueled his heart for so long start to thaw. The miserable wretch that was his soul felt a flicker of hope. His father had loved him and had wanted him to be the best he could be, no matter how tragically he had tried to teach that lesson. And now he understood that it was only ever a lesson. He could become the man his father knew he could be. The murderous twins. The McKellen twins felt the librarian's stinky breath brush against their nape, so they quickly slid their dirt and blood-stained hands under the table. "Shut up, you two," hissed the librarian. "Sorry," said Milo McKellen, with the fakest of smiles. The librarian stomped back to his dimly lit desk, where he resumed his scribbling on a notebook. Occasionally, he raised his bald head to survey the hall like a living security camera. Martin McKellen peeked under the table. A few droplets of blood had stained his jeans, and now it would be impossible for him, or rather his mother, if she hadn't been gone, to wash them away. They would become foolproof evidence, marked forever on his favorite pair of pants. A pale moonlight cast long shadows over the library hall, where the McKellen twins, still soaking wet from the rain, had found shelter. They had sat on one of the long benches, their hands and arms covered in dirt and blood. And now they were arguing. Their disagreement kept on drawing the attention of the librarian, who scowled at the twins and scolded them whenever they spoke a little louder. "See that corner over there?" Martin asked Milo. "Let's go talk there. He won't interrupt us." The twins tiptoed to a corner far from where the librarian sat, hoping to get more privacy. They were surrounded by books, as dusty as if no one had ever touched them except the person who had placed them there centuries prior. "So," said Milo. "What were we?" "The body," said Martin. "Yes, The body. I think we should have buried it instead of letting it sink into the lake, Martin snorted. As if a hump of soil in the middle of the woods is something you see every day. Better than a dead woman in the trunk of her own car, if you ask me. What other options were there? I couldn't even think straight. Those damn blue lights. Well, it's no use discussing this now, said Milo. We got rid of her. Something hit the floor and echoed throughout the library hall. Martin peeped out. The librarian was kneeling near the bench where the twins were sitting earlier, and he was struggling to get back up. The ink from his fountain pen had bled in a large puddle onto the marble floor, and now the librarian was fumbling for a tissue to clean that mess with. Milo peeped too, and he said, "He'll be busy for a while." Martin leaned against the book-filled shelves and sighed. "We can't hide in a library forever, Milo." "I know," he said. "But we've got to at least wait for the rain to stop so that we can hop on a train and leave." "Where were you thinking?" Martin asked. Milo shrugged. "I don't know. Canada?" Suddenly, a clap of thunder boomed in the night sky outside, and the library's doors burst open. Martin looked over at the two men who had just entered the building. They were wet, just like the twins were, but they wore blue uniforms, like police officers, said Martin in a quivering whisper. "There's two of them. What do we do?" Milo whispered back. Martin shook his head. "I have no idea," he thought. He was afraid to even think at this point. "They came looking for us," said Milo. "No doubt about that. Otherwise, what would two police officers do in a library after hours?" "Hush, Milo," said Martin. "Please, don't let us be caught." "Good evening," thundered a voice. It was one of the two men. The twins cocked their ears. "I'm Agent Phillips, and this is Agent Clifford. We're looking for a couple of young men, probably in their 20s, red-haired, pretty thin." The librarian did not answer, so the other police officer, Clifford, urged him. "Have you seen someone with this profile by chance?" Martin held his breath. He prayed the librarian didn't reveal where he and his brother were hiding. Second by second, a thick silence was filling up the atmosphere, like a cake rising in the oven. Except this oven was far too hot, and this cake was about to explode. "Avoid us any trouble, Mr. Librarian," said Agent Phillips. "Just tell us if you've seen them or not, and we won't bother you any longer." Martin pushed Milo back into the corner and flattened himself against the bookshelves in case their cover was about to be blown. The librarian cleared his throat and spoke. "No," he said. "I haven't seen them." Martin and Milo gasped as quietly as they could and peeped out from behind the bookshelves once again. The two police officers were looking at one another. Clifford's eyes became two narrow slits, two poison darts. He was now aiming at the librarian. "Are you sure?" said the agent. "Sure," said the librarian, trying to sound more sure than he was. "Very well," said Agent Phillips, nudging at Clifford. "Sorry to have disturbed you." We'll leave you now." But Clifford turned and pointed at the bench where the twins were sitting earlier. Under it, there was a mess of paper tissues and ink. And, "Look," said Martin to his brother. "The blood is gone." Milo looked down at the blood on his hands, by now dry, and then over at the bench. "What blood, Martin?" "When I hid my hands under the table, I spilled blood everywhere, on my jeans, on the floor." Clifford's voice boomed once again. "What's that over there, Mr. Librarian?" Agent Phillips grabbed his colleague by his arm. "Let's stop it here, Ben. He says he hasn't seen them." Clifford broke free of Phillips' grip and fetched the heap of stained paper from the ground. He marched back to the librarian's desk, where the poor man was standing still, but frail, like a clay statue. Clifford unfolded one tissue and slammed it on the librarian's desk. It was stained with large blotches of blood. "What about this, Mr. Librarian?" Clifford scoffed. "Been dabbing the floor all night long, haven't you?" The librarian didn't move a muscle. He just stared at the stained tissue. "These kids have slaughtered their mother," Clifford roared. For a moment, all the books in the library seemed to have teetered, like there had been a severe but rapid earth tremor. "Clifford, calm down now," Agent Phillips commanded. He turned to the librarian. "Tell us the truth, sir. As you can see, this is pretty urgent." The librarian slowly pointed his index finger at the corner where the twins were hiding. Milo gulped, and Martin stopped breathing altogether. The two police officers looked at one another one last time. Agent Clifford pulled out 2 pairs of handcuffs, and Phillips led the way. When they reached the darkened corner where the twins were supposed to be hiding, though, there were only rows of shelves full of dusty tomes to welcome them. Justice in a whiskey. March 21st, 1957. There is blood on the bed. His stomach ripped open, his left eye mutilated, and the side table is lying near the door frame. His wife is bawling her eyes out, and there is a half-empty bottle of whiskey under the bed. The cut on his body shows that he was attacked by a knife, and the incision is so clean, almost as if the murderer is an anatomy genius. The mouth of the body is gaping open, and his neck has purple splotches. My friend, who is an investigator, clicks photos from all angles. With each flash of the camera, I see a clue unfolding beside me. Officer Barn rushes towards me, his eyes speaking of a strange fear. He clasps my shoulder, urging me to come out of the room. I march out and stand near the doorframe, my eyes speaking instead of my tongue. "What's the matter, Barn?" I ask him, trying to hide the expression on my face. "We need to hurry. This case is a very high profile." He coughs up, interrupting himself. He's not an ordinary person. He is the son of a famous business tycoon. This case is no longer a government record. It's a public scandal. He huffs at the end. "I know he is the son of Mr. Edward, owner of the steel factory, but we cannot hurry it up. leaving clues to the rats. I breathe in with ease. We cannot delay it either. Mr. Barnes speaks up. We need to fasten our belts and rush our brains before it goes out into the hands of the media. I nod my head and once again enter the room, observing each minute detail. I see a leaflet in the vase of flowers. I ask my assistant for gloves. I wear them and take the leaflet carefully from the flowers. It's a prescription. The ink is fading away in the water, but the logo on the paper is smudged, yet noticeable. Sir, you can hand it over, the forensic officer says, pointing out to a plastic bag in his hands. I take the plastic bag from him and carefully put the leaflet in it. I fold the upper corner of the bag and place it on the left side of my coat pocket. Sir, the evidence belongs in our department. I beg your pardon, but you have to hand it over to us. The forensic officer pleads with his eyes and places out his arm. Even I have a small lab at my home. I would love to personally investigate in my space. I boldly put my statement forward. I wish you could do that, sir. But since the case is high profile, we have to follow all the orders from our seniors and judiciary. I can't help you this time. I would love your cooperation more. I sign in defeat and take the bag from my right side of my coat and place it in his hand. He bows his head in respect and leaves the place. I go into the drawing room where the wife of the victim is present. She has a lilac handkerchief in her hands and is wearing a black dress. Her eyes are red due to the constant crying, and her cheeks are soaked in due to her tears. She's surrounded by her neighbors and friends. I tell them to depart soon, to push my investigation forward. Everybody leaves, and Catherine gathers herself, aligning her back with her body. I sit a few inches apart from her, observing her delicate little hands, which no longer has the burden of the band. Miss Catherine, sorry for your loss. I know the departure of your husband is so unexpected, and I could understand your sorrow. She sobbed a little and quivered her lips. I hope my husband gets justice, sir. That's all I want. I want the culprit dead. Her eyes blazing with anger and deep sorrow. I take her hand in mine and say to her with a coy smile, that will soon happen. I promise you. I could feel the coldness of the plastic in our hands. A week before, I could not take my eyes away from the bruise, which was on Catherine's left elbow. The wound itself is telling the backstory of its origin. She lifts my chin, directing my eyes towards her. Her hands were cold, and her little finger was swollen. Her eyes were dull, with no light or joy. You called me here for something? She questions me with disgrace and disregard. Yeah, so I am going to dive in for cooking. You know, learning a few basic skills and recipes. I laugh at my lie and take out the tray of knives. Sachant, what are you starting with? Her voice is cold like ice. and her eyes tired. She has a small brown patch near her eyelid, hinting at her life. I immediately try to distract myself from the bruise by balling my fists and digging my fingernails into my palms. I think with the stomach, cleaning and cutting will be far easier from here, I say, pointing out to the featherless chicken on the table. That's interesting. So, what help do you need from me? Catherine asks me. Well, I don't know about the cleaning and cutting. Like, see this butler's knives? It's too big for the work. We don't need this, but this. I point out to the medium-sized scalpel with a sharp edge. I think this will do. Precision cut and less mess. She nods her head, and a slow smile rises across her square face. Even I think so. I loved the way she smiled, always. By the way, have you read the 10th chapter of Volume 1 of Anatomy? I ask her, with my eyes focused on the scalpel. 3 weeks earlier. I always flunked chemistry. Thanks to you, otherwise I would be a technician in a hospital. I pass a gentle smile to Catherine. I don't know about the academics' chemistry, but your reaction with women was always volatile. She taunts with me, her gentle smile. Not all, only with one. But that reaction became highly toxic for everybody. Hearing my sharp words, her smile disappeared. I hate for causing an explosion in that research. If I had focused on one chemical, then my life would not have been so volatile. Her voice sounded disapproved. I miss my compound too. I sigh with disbelief. She turns away from her face and wipes her tears. I know it's so tough for her to gather the courage daily and to chalk out the plan. I try to lighten the mood surrounding us. The movie makers are so hypocrites, I shout. What? She turns around, but does not see me in the eye. They always show that when you place the chloroform on someone's face, the person instantly passes out. But it's not true. A person at least requires 15 minutes of continuous exposure for passing out to its fullest. Movies are for entertainment, not for knowledge, we say in unison. Out-timing makes me laugh, and she laughs seeing me laugh. By the way, Catherine, I want to say you an amazing fact. Do you know, whiskey and chloroform have the same taste? She finally sees me in the eye and smiles. Now I know. And laughs like a small hyena. 4 weeks earlier, the church is calm, and the benches are clean. It's Monday, hence the absence of people seems relevant. I smell the candles burning and could hear the faint sobbing from the room of confession. I walk towards it and open the stall. It was empty, but the nearby stall wasn't. I rotate my head around to see anyone's presence and finally steps in. Feeling the presence of my space, the sobbing discontinued. It's the result of my sin. If I hadn't cheated the person who loved me the most and did not break his heart, this would have never happened. Her voice breaks down, and through the thin mesh, I could guess her marble hands wiping the tears away from her face. The result, or the outcome of your sin, depends on the Lord itself. It's you and me who have the final decision. I have forgiven you already. But what about the devotion and love you offer him? Is his response appropriate? Does raising hand on your wife courageous? I sigh in dismay. But what are we going to do? Do you think your plan is proper? She questions my intentions. The law won't help us. His hands are long, and their pockets are full with his money. It's not about how I feel. It's about the justice you need. I face her across the mesh, digging my fingernails in my palm. I won't lose you because of somebody's treatment. I choke down my tears. She stands across the mesh, placing her hand on it. I do the same. A month ago, sir, there is a woman. She is stating emergency and needs urgent observation. Will you come soon? The nurse hurried her sentences. Can you call another doctor? I have completed my hours. I pack my suitcase and turn to leave. She says it's a matter of life and death, sir. The nurses exclaim. Okay, fine. Only 15 minutes. Then transfer her case to Dr. Edmund. I wipe the sweat on my forehead and put on my white coat. Sometimes the Hippocratic oath becomes the death of me. I go to the patient's cubicle. I am in no mood to observe the patient. I remove the board placed near the bed and read the symptoms taken by the nurse. Internal bleeding in the cervix, partially choked, bruises on hand and near the eyes, lower lip cut, fracture on the wrist. Miss, when did this happen? And how can we aid you? I reply bluntly. My energy is on brink of exhaustion and pushed to my limits. A pale, cold hand catches my wrist, and a humble voice reaches my ear. Just forgive me, will you? My ears recognize it. And when I see her face, the blood in my body stills. I catch her limp hand and shout, Catherine. Tears were flowing down her eyes, and her face had lost the life and sunshine she had. All she could do was clasp my hand with more force. I kiss her knuckles and run my fingers lightly on the bruises. Seeing her in this state, my mind rattles. I clench my teeth, and tears of anger rush down my cheeks. Who did this to you? I ask her, trying to mask my anger. She gathers herself, and with the last courage within her, utters, my husband.